Europe called them Egyptians. For 500 years, the continent built laws, persecution, and genocide on a name that was completely wrong. When scientists finally ran the DNA, it didn't point to North Africa. It pointed somewhere that shattered everything Europe thought it understood about where these people came from and why they were here at all. 10 to 12 million Romani people live across Europe today. They are the continent's largest ethnic minority, concentrated in Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, Spain, and across the Balkans. They have survived in Europe for centuries. And for most of those centuries, Europe called them by a name borrowed from a country they have never been from. The word gypsy comes from Egyptian, not metaphorically, etymologically. The Spanish gitano, the French cigane, the German zigeuner, every major European word for the Romani traces back to the same source. Egypt, a continent that plays no role in their actual history. The name Europe gave them was a mistake, and that mistake ran everything: law, policy, persecution, and genocide for 500 years. What makes this stranger is that the Romani have no nation-state, no ancestral homeland on any European map that can be circled. Most ethnic groups, even stateless ones, carry a geographic memory. The Romani appeared to carry none, and that absence was used against them as evidence, somehow, that they had never truly existed somewhere real. The lack of a place to point to was treated as the lack of a people at all. That logic was convenient. It was also, as it turned out, entirely wrong. The evidence to disprove it had been building for 2 centuries. Europe simply declined to read it. Yet something survived. The Romani language is intact across a dozen countries. Romani culture persists in communities separated by thousands of miles. And the Romani genetic signature survived centuries of enslavement in Romania and Moldova, expulsion laws across Western Europe, and the Portremos, the Nazi genocide that killed hundreds of thousands of Romani people in the 20th century. Something in this population held across every force that was directed at ending it. The question is, what were they before Europe named them something false? The answer begins not with science. It begins with a story. A very deliberate, carefully constructed story. When the first Romani groups arrived at the gates of Western European cities in the 15th century, they didn't arrive anonymously. They carried letters, documents of safe passage, signed and official, claiming that these were Christian pilgrims from Little Egypt, doing penance for having briefly abandoned their faith. The story was detailed, it was persuasive, it was designed to work. Historical sources confirm that some Romani leaders didn't just repeat this story, they embellished it. One account claims they told city authorities they had been sent into exile by their king. Another claimed the exile was ordered by the Pope himself. They were performing an identity that medieval Christian Europe would recognize: penitent pilgrims, displaced believers, temporarily homeless by divine punishment. The Egyptian story wasn't imposed on the Romani from outside. It was, in part, a survival strategy built from the inside. It gave them access to towns. It secured charity. It created protection in a continent deeply, often violently, suspicious of outsiders who looked different and spoke a language nobody recognized. But the strategy had a consequence: nobody could have predicted. Europe believed it. Byzantine clergy had already been calling Romani fortune-tellers Aegyptici, Egyptian women, centuries before the letters of passage were written. In Hungary, Romani communities were called people of the pharaoh. The label calcified into law, into theology, into the permanent architecture of European prejudice. Everything Europe knew about the Romani for 5 centuries was built on a story the Romani themselves had helped construct, not because it was true, but because the truth was apparently more dangerous than the fiction. That raises the obvious, uncomfortable question: what were they hiding behind Egypt? The first person to crack it was not a geneticist. He was a Hungarian theology student in the 18th century named Valley István. He was not looking for Romani's origin. He was studying at a Dutch university when he encountered 3 Indian students. Something about the words they used struck him as familiar in a way he could not immediately explain. He knew Romani communities back home in Hungary, and something in what these Indian students were saying sounded impossibly like the language he had heard there. He collected word lists, he brought them home, he compared them. What he found was unmistakable. The Romani language was connected to Sanskrit, the ancient literary language of the Indian subcontinent, ancestor of the modern Indo-Aryan languages of northern India. Linguists who followed Valley confirmed it across the next 2 centuries. The Romani language retains substantial vocabulary from Sanskrit and from Prakrit, a family of Middle Indo-Aryan languages. Its grammar aligns closely with modern Northern Indian languages. Its nearest relatives, research suggests, are Punjabi and Kashmiri. The Romani language is, structurally and historically, a language of northern India. It has been spoken only in Europe since the Middle Ages, but it did not begin there. The language pointed to northwestern India centuries before population genetics existed as a field. But language alone raises a problem. Languages migrate without people. A population can adopt a language entirely without sharing the ancestry of the group that created it. The language pointed to India, but were the people themselves Indian, or only the words they spoke? Then the DNA arrived, and the signal was unambiguous. Research based on genome-wide data from 13 Romani groups across Europe, compared against samples from populations across the Indian subcontinent, Central Asia, and the Middle East, points to a single founding population. One group, departing from northwestern India, in the region of present-day Punjab, approximately 1,500 years ago. This was not a gradual drift. It was a departure. The Romani are described in the research literature as a founder population. That term means something specific. It means they descend from a relatively small ancestral group whose genetic signature was compressed at the moment of leaving and then preserved, largely intact, across every group that descended from them. The signal is not diluted across Europe. It is consistent. A Y-chromosome marker, haplogroup HM82, rare outside South Asia, appears in roughly 47% of Romani men. Nearly half of all Romani men carry a genetic marker that belongs to the Indian subcontinent. A maternal lineage marker, mitochondrial haplogroup M5, documented as particular to India, accounts for nearly 30% of Romani lineage. And then there is the 1267DLG mutation. This is a specific genetic variant that causes a form of congenital myasthenia, an inherited neuromuscular condition. It appears in Romani patients. It is otherwise known only in people of Indian ancestry. Researchers describe it as among the strongest evidence of Indian origins, not because it proves migration, but because a private disease mutation shared between two populations cannot be explained by coincidence. This is not geography. This is biology. A mutation carried out of India 1,500 years ago, still present in Romani bodies today. In other words, the ancestry did not only survive in a language or a cultural practice, it survived inside the biological code of the people themselves, written into every cell. The genetics froze a moment of departure. A small group left northwestern India, and the biological signature of that original group is still readable across every Romani population in Europe today. The DNA confirmed what the language had been saying for centuries. But that answer creates a harder problem. Why did they leave? The reason is still debated. Research suggests that invasions of northern India in the early 11th century, particularly the campaigns of Mahmud of Ghazni across the Punjab and Rajasthan, caused severe disruption, conquest, displacement, mass violence, instability. One controversial theory links the departure specifically to the 1018 capture of the city of Kannauj, citing descriptions in the medieval chronicle Kitab-i-Yamini. This remains a hypothesis. The departure's exact cause is still contested among scholars. What the DNA makes clear is this: they left as a group small enough to carry a founder signal, and they moved fast enough to preserve it. That smallness is itself a clue. It suggests urgency, not gradual movement. People choosing to migrate spread slowly over generations. People fleeing compress into a tight group and move. The genetics record which one this was. And that distinction matters because it changes what the Romani are. Not a wandering culture, a displaced one. After leaving northwestern India, the Proto-Romani moved through what is now Iran and into the Byzantine Empire by around the 11th century. During this transit, the DNA picked up some Near Eastern ancestry. Not much. Enough to be detectable, not enough to obscure the South Asian signal underneath. They moved through these regions without being absorbed by them. The European spread began from the Balkans approximately 900 years ago, and once in Europe, the fragmentation started. Persecution, expulsion, forced labor, and in Romania and Moldova, outright enslavement for several centuries, pushed different Romani communities into varying degrees of isolation. Communities stopped marrying outside their group. The technical term is endogamy, marriage strictly within the community. Research describes the result as a conglomerate of genetically isolated founder populations. Not one population that spread freely across Europe. Multiple populations that shared an origin but were repeatedly compressed, isolated, and separated by the forces acting against them. A 2022 study of Iberian Roma found that over 60% of their mitochondrial DNA pool consists of founder lineages of South Asian origin, compared to roughly 0.7% of founder lineages in non-Romani Iberian populations. The contrast is not subtle. Genetic zones among the Romani do not follow modern national borders. They follow history. The variation is a map of what was done to them, not of where they chose to go. And all of that variation points directly at the largest myth Europe ever told about the Romani. Not the Egyptian story. Something deeper. For centuries, the dominant European image of the Romani was this. They were wanderers by nature, nomadic by instinct, rootless by choice, incapable of settlement, fundamentally exterior to the societies they moved through. This image was not just a prejudice, it was written into law. It justified enslavement. It justified expulsion orders. It justified forced sterilization campaigns that continued in several European countries into the 20th century. It was used to frame the peirasmos as something inevitable rather than something chosen. The DNA cracks this myth. Not gently. Most Romani have been settled for centuries. Research states explicitly that the characterization of the Romani as traditionally itinerant is a misconception. The majority of Romani communities in Europe today are and have long been sedentary. The nomadic image was not simply observed, it was enforced. European laws in country after country prohibited Romani people from owning land, settling in towns, joining trade guilds, or practicing professions. These laws made movement a condition of survival. Then other laws criminalized the movement those laws had created. The Romani were made into wanderers by legal architecture, then punished for wandering. The genetics make this visible in a way that words alone cannot. The distinctive pattern in Romani DNA, the founder effect, the reduced diversity, the isolated subgroups, is not the signature of ancient nomadism. It is the signature of repeated violent compression. Small populations isolated by force. Communities surviving persecution by drawing inward. The loss of genetic diversity that researchers document in the Romani is not what a freely wandering people leaves behind. It is what happens to people who are repeatedly expelled, enslaved, and pushed to the margins until the margins become their only space. The genetics record what was done to them, not what they chose. The Romani carry a genetic signature that has survived 1,500 years across 3 continents. It survived the Seljuk and Byzantine periods, Ottoman expansion, centuries of enslavement in Romania, expulsion laws across Western Europe, industrialized genocide, and still, in the Y-chromosomes of Romani men and the mitochondrial DNA of Romani women, the haplogroups of the Punjab remain. The disease mutations of northern India remain. The language, descended from Sanskrit, remains. The signal did not fade. It persisted through everything designed to erase it. Science does not restore a homeland. It does not undo the persecution. Some questions at the edges remain open. Which exact ancestral groups? Which precise departure route? The full sequence of bottlenecks across 1,000 years of movement and survival. Researchers continue to work on them. The picture at the margins is still being assembled, and it will keep being refined as more genetic data arrives from more communities across Europe and South Asia. The research is ongoing. The signal, however, has not moved. What was found in the first major studies has been confirmed, refined, and deepened in every study since. But the core is not in dispute. The Romani came from a specific corner of South Asia. They moved through Iran and Anatolia. They entered Europe through the Balkans. They were enslaved, expelled, sterilized, and murdered across a dozen countries over 5 centuries. And the DNA, carrying the markers of the Punjab, encoding the inherited conditions of northern India, survived all of it. Europe called them Egyptians. The word for that is not an error in translation. It is the record of what happens when a continent decides, for 500 years, not to look. The DNA looked, and what it found was not a wandering people with no roots. It found people whose roots run 1,500 years deep, through India, through Iran, through the Balkans, through every country that tried to